Children are cheap, wives are expensive. I want you to keep that in mind as these two have a conversation about the falling birth rates worldwide. Right? Keep that in mind. Why? Is because the reason why birth rates are falling is that women aren't interested in having children. Period. There is no other reason. The responsibility is 100% on their doorstep. So since they can't come out and say that, they have to come up with some other idea. In this case, children are expensive, right? Well, this particular video with featuring Norman Finkelstein here, he debunks that, right? Now let's hear this.
This is going to sound like feeding anti-immigrant hysteria. If you go like on the Coney Island boardwalk, here's the mother and here's the father, and there's an army of kids behind them. There's like 8 kids. I think the Spanish word for army is ejército, ejército, I think. There's an army of kids behind them. And on top of all that, they're living on sub-minimum wages. They're having large families, and they're sending half their paycheck home. How they manage it, only God knows. But
well, it's beyond you, of course, because as a typical female worshiper, you don't recognize that the woman is the limiting factor. This woman you're talking about is a third world woman whose standard of living is rock bottom. So therefore, that her husband can actually provide for her. And they can have all kinds of children. The children are cheap as dirt. It's the wife that's expensive. Again, like I'm from a family of 9, right? My father had one income for all of us, right? Now that's anecdotal, right? But Finkelstein isn't talking about something anecdotal. He's not talking about his own personal life. He's talking about observable reality. That these third worlders had lots of kids on low income. This is something anyone can observe, right? So he debunks that. So now we'll get into this and we'll see the dancing and prancing these people go through, right? I mean, about here.
To the system of shock to these societies, no matter what happens. Let's get into why this is the case. Why is fertility falling globally? I mean, I would understand a country or two. I've heard this about, the US, about Japan. Why would it be happening on a global scale?
Right. Well, these guys actually already know. The women aren't interested in having children. They had children because they needed them on a personal level, and now they don't. It doesn't matter that we need children for the future. People don't think like that. They think about their own personal situation. And every woman thinks of herself as, do I want to bother with kids? And the answer is no.
And I think that's a really crucial question you ask, Adam, because here in Britain, we've just seen our total fertility rate, that's the number of children each woman has fallen to 1.44. And lots of people say, oh, it's the cost of living, or oh, it's high house prices. And each of those phenomena are real, but that same explanation cannot explain why this is happening all around the world, everywhere.
Right.
Exactly. So they're admitting it themselves, right? This is not an economic issue.
High house prices in London can't explain what's going on in the Guatemalan highlands. It's happening everywhere, all at once. So irrespective of country level of income, this is dropping. Now, the
other thing is, this guy, if he really wants to know, why doesn't he just ask her? This is Dr. Evans. Hey, Dr. Evans, where's your 3 children? She could answer him right there. She says, I'm not interested. So they're looking for all these factors when it's staring them right in the face.
Famous traditional model of falling fertility was Gary Becker's model of a quality-quantity trade-off, that parents are choosing to sort of maximize their children's output. So if you're on a farm, you choose to have lots of children, you're maximizing quantity because you need all those hands. You need little Adams to be doing the transplanting of rice.
I like how she said Adams. She's right about that. It's the boys they wanted for the labor.
Or whatever. Or you're living in a city like LA, and there are lots of nice job opportunities, and you think, I'll have 2 Adams so that they can be super skilled and get nice jobs, right?
Do you think most people are thinking about, like, I'm having kids, I'm thinking about, I'm going to have 2 Adams, I'm going to have 2 of me, you'll have 2 Alices. We think of our kids as just...
That's how some economists might...
Yeah, that's why he's pointing out it's bullshit too. Like, people aren't thinking ahead. He even admits it later. Let me just skip to that part. Right here.
Right. And I'm also, by the way, always skeptical of the economics, behavioral explanation of, people are trying to maximize their economic output. That's not why people do things, and especially not when having kids, right? Like, people have kids for all sorts of reasons. First of all, most people have kids by accident.
Okay, then it's not for all sorts of reasons then, is it?
Like, let's be honest. Most kids are someone just, they got horny and they made a mistake, and they're like, I guess I'll keep this one. That's not bad. Sure, let's do it. Let's get married.
Exactly. Children are just a consequence of sex. That's where they come in. And by the way, this is why women fight so hard for abortion rights, which is really abortion privileges. They want a situation where they can have consequence-free sex, and that involves, if you get impregnated when you didn't want to, get rid of the child legally. That's what this is about. This is 100% on women's doorstep. What's going on here, right? They're 100% to blame. Men have no choice in any of this, right? Now, this is interesting in what she has to say here. It's an emotional cost for women.
So that massive, massive investment in education means that having a child is not just financially draining, but also emotionally draining. And so I speak to lots of people and they say, I'm just stopping at 1. I cannot go through that enormous slog again.
Yeah, it's an emotional, exactly. Having children is self-sacrifice, and people aren't into that. Especially not women, right? Men are, though. They're willing to do whatever it takes to have a woman in their life. But women aren't interested in men or children, right?
But there's something, Adam, that gave me hope in thinking how this might change. So I notice when I'm in East Asia, and I also notice this in California, there are lots of very fancy pet shops. And this made me think that I think many humans love something little. They love something cute like that. People with their puppies, people enjoying it. Like people in Singapore, people in Hong Kong, in China, people people in Beijing are having more dogs than kids. And I think if kids were more like dogs, like if they weren't so high maintenance, people would be more likely to have kids. Like,
she says people, she means women. Right. High maintenance. Right. Self-sacrifice. They're not into that. Right. Kids be more like pets. In other words, kids are little human beings. Right. They have their own opinions. They have their own demands. And the gals aren't into that. Pet is low maintenance. All you have to do is feed it and keep it warm, and it's fine. Doesn't make any demands. It's 100% for you. There you go. Okay, now they're going to blame men for women's decisions.
So care costs are really going to hit parental income. So anything that's making children more costly, if it's emotionally, financially, that's going to, mean in a kind of trade-off, be like, I don't want such a big commitment. So that's one aspect. And so many governments across the world have tried to give pronatal incentives. In Scandinavia, for example, they give all kinds of sweeteners to encourage.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Women aren't interested. What can I say?
Encourage people to have children, and they're doing the
Sure,
same in China.
swag bag at the hospital.
Right, swag bag. And the problem with these swag bags is they fail to notice something even bigger that's happening in many rich and culturally liberal societies. And that is relationship frictions.
Translation: the man wants something out of the relationship. He wants reciprocation. He's a human being too. That's what she means. And the woman isn't into that.
So in Sweden, 50% of all households are single adult households.
Whoa.
So
wait. So 50% of all households is an adult living alone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this correlates.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hey, lady, where's your husband? I don't know if she's married or not, but I don't see anyone with you. I don't see any children. There you go. So why is this such a wow for you, Adam?
It's very closely with fertility. So in South Korea, as young women go to university and for all kinds of reasons don't necessarily find someone that they love and cherish and who treats them with the respect that they want.
Treats them with the respect that they want. In other words, the man doesn't entirely 100% submit. That's what she means by respect.
Many are increasingly choosing to remain single. So there could be some personality.
So she admits this is about the women. Right. It's the women who say, the man doesn't respect me. He had an argument with me once. He wants something out of me. Right. So let's stop making this gender neutral.
Frictions, let's suppose you go on a date with a guy, let's call him Adam, and he's narcissistic, he's not that funny.
Why is everybody Adam?
There you go. She's putting it on the guys. He's narcissistic. Again, narcissistic means the guy wants to be treated like a human being. He wants give and take, and women don't do that. All right. So there it is, right there in a nutshell. Here she's going to blame social media.
More introverted in general. So young people aren't going out so much, they aren't drinking so much, so they're generally staying in more. And we also, that was, of course, accelerated by COVID. So we see a general trend in people becoming more introverted. And as people become more introverted, for example, I have dates.
This is bullshit, of course. People aren't becoming more introverted. No, the women just aren't interested in getting together with the guys. Hey, lady, how come this doesn't affect girlfriends, right? Like women having girlfriends, right? Social media, what is about is connecting with your fellow man, right? Women get together all the time. Are you saying you don't have any female friends that you invite to your apartment? Right, okay.
From a consumer market research company, and it shows that in Brazil, in the Philippines, in Saudi Arabia, people are spending about 3.5 hours a day on social media apps. And that's passively scrolling. And so if you're just consuming a TV or etc., you're not developing these social skills, right?
Oh, I see. Lack of social skills, right? She's blaming men, of course. When she says lack of social skills, she means men, right? TV's been around for 100 years, lady, or at least 75. So you can't blame that. See, they're always looking for some other reason. Okay, more searching for any other excuse other than women just aren't interested in men and children.
That you said that's the only thing that's happened everywhere.
Yeah.
I did have, and I'm blanking on the person's name, and I'll look it up and I'll say it in the outro of the episode. But we did an episode a few years ago talking about the rise of microplastics and how that might be, interfering with biological fertility. Right. We had a research.
Really? Biological fertility. So is that making individuals live by themselves? Like, as you said before, adults, single adults living in a home by themselves. That's being caused by microplastics. Right. Okay. So another stretch. They're going to talk about crisis with men. Why? I thought this was about birth rates.
I want to talk about men because you have also written a lot about the crisis facing men. Again, not just in the UK or the US, but globally, I believe. Tell me what you mean by that.
Okay, so I think over the past 50 years, we've seen that many of our economies have become, there's an increasing premium for skills, right? So we want skilled workers. But we've seen that the least educated men are often, many countries, struggling to make so much educational progress. So in Europe.
Right. So how does this tie into birth rates? Women aren't interested in men. Therefore, men have to bribe women with wealth. So if men can't earn wealth, then it's not happening. You'll notice that never comes out in this conversation.
Europe, in America, in Latin America, even in India, women are outpacing men in education. And
of course, and if they put the blame on men, they're not outpacing them, right? We've said this over and over again. Men are being kicked out or they can't afford to go. It's that simple.
So the least educated men are struggling to transition to college. Now, if men are struggling to transition to college in the US, for example, they stay pretty much in three sectors. That's construction, manufacturing, or just not working at all.
So if they're in manufacturing or construction, what does that matter? Isn't that a job? It matters in the way that women deselect those guys. That's how it matters. So when she's talking about a crisis of men, he means women are dumping them or not getting together with them. So she's admitting a man's whole life is trying to get a partner.
And the construction and manufacture, the problem if you don't go to college is those sectors are particularly vulnerable to automation. So, instead of a guy.
The man's problem isn't construction so much as being unemployed. Why don't you just say that? You know why she didn't just say that? Because even if the guy was employed in construction, a woman's not interested in that. He's too low status for her to bother with. So all this stuff goes unsaid by them. They are saying it, but they aren't.
By being on a construction site and lifting a ton of shit, it's the robot who's doing it instead, right? So why would you bother hiring a worker if you can just get a robot? In manufacturing, whether we're creating cars, we're creating phones, you can do it all with robots. So if you didn't have much education, it was fine. Maybe in the 1970s, you could still get a decent job. Workers could still get a little cottage near Lake Michigan.
You could still get a cottage. In other words, you could still get enough to bribe a woman into your life. So the answer to all this problems, lady, is that you women would have to change how you view things. You would have to say, hypergamy is bad. I'm going to have to settle for less. I might have to actually like a man, but you can't. You can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. Or in this case, you can't make the kids like broccoli. So the absolute answer to this would to say that, be honest, women don't like men, and men should find something else to motivate themselves. That's what and we have to deal with falling birth rates. We have to deal with it. We're just going to have to accept it. That would be the answer to this dilemma.
Or something like that. And now you can't because it's been displaced by robots. And so the wages of men without college education have massively plummeted. So the least educated men, the men who don't go to college, are struggling. Their wages have been hit, and that's a function of automation. That's a function.
Hey, lady, what does it matter if their wages? are hit. Remember, you love men for who they are, right? That's why you're with a man. Oh, yeah, you're not.
Of globalization with increased competition from overseas. And so these least educated men are struggling. And then on top of that, I think that men suffer from a particular cultural straitjacket.
That women put on them. That women put on them.
In that we simultaneously see rising demand for care, rising demand for interpersonal skills, for social skills. But young men without their college education aren't transitioning to work in a nail salon, for example, or to work in.
Yeah, because women would deselect him. They wouldn't be interested in a man like that. We've already done videos about this. This is a woman who had a house husband and she dumped him. They're not interested. So they're blaming men for women's choices. They're always going to do that.
In an old age and in a care home, or to work, so where there is labor demand for that skilled interpersonal care work, ideas of masculinity impose a straitjacket, and so men aren't moving into.
Yeah, but these ideas of masculinity are enforced by you women. That's why they leave out. They always bring up to the finish line but never cross, right?
To those sectors. So it's men have been really hit in ways that women have not.
And something that I
really. So again, what has this got to do with birth rates? Because the one thing they leave out is that women deselect these men and don't want to have children with them. That's the answer that they can never come to.
I talk about a lot is that men really suffer from a narrow view of masculinity that they have more trouble breaking out of than.
No. Fuck you, dude. Fuck you. Blaming men for something that women demand. This guy's been licking this woman's ass the whole hour and a half. I'm not going to put it up with any more of this. We've already answered all the questions. We already know what's going on here. Of course, she's laughing her ass off because she knows no matter what, she might be concerned slightly with birth rates, but she doesn't really care. It doesn't affect her life personally. Her life is top dog. And she's not going to have children. If she wanted children, she'd have them. You're to blame. Anyway, that's all I got to say about this.